And welcome everybody to our Friday live stream, coming to you from the Huckabee Theater, where TBN does our television show every single weekend. We'll be getting ready for that the rest of the day and taping tonight. You'll be seeing it this weekend, but before we get through all that, we are very happy to welcome you to this live stream where we'll be taking your questions over the next several minutes. Pam Kay, senior producer for the Huckabee Show, as she always does, joins me here, and we're going to let her read questions that you send in, which you can do by sending the questions in the chat. If you'd like a little more visibility, you can send it in the super chat. That pushes it up to the top. Now, we've got moderators watching the chat for your questions. We'll get them to her. She'll read them to me. I'll answer as many as we can get to in our time together. But there's something important for you to do. What's that? Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell that you see on your screen. Leave us a comment. Be sure and leave us a like and a share. Share meaning that you tell other people, hey, did you know the live stream is on? And tell them to join us. Get their questions in as well. All right, we got a lot of stuff we're going to cover today. We'll talk about the Mar-a-Lago raid affidavit being released by the judge today, what it said, what it didn't say, and what it means. This week, big announcement from President Biden about student loan bailouts. Are you one of those suckers that paid off your loan? Don't you feel stupid right now? If you'd have just not made those payments, Uncle Joe would wipe it out. Maybe you're one of those people, you're glad, because that means you get to have more lattes at Starbucks every day. You'll get to increase your cable TV subscription and add more premium channels because suckers like me are paying for your loan. We'll talk about that today. You can tell I have some feelings. And also we'll talk some other nonsense from Biden. Not that we can understand it, but we'll play it for you, and maybe you can. Every week we pick out a favorite comment from last week's live stream. This one comes to us from Bill Fargo, who after last week's show said, just when we thought that Obama and Biden were the best firearm salesmen we'd ever seen, we find out that the IRS is going to leave them both in the dust. All right, we've got a question of the week. This is the one we'd like for you to respond to today. Do you agree with forgiving student loans for people making up to $125,000 individually or $250,000 for a married couple? Is that a good idea? Leave your answers in the chat and in the comment section below. And let's go to some of those clips. First of all, well, before we do, let me mention that the big news today has been the release of the affidavit. We mentioned that early. And I want to just kind of press upon you that this was no surprise in a way, because there's a 38-page affidavit that was released. 20 of the pages are pretty much fully redacted. So there's only 18 pages, and we have a link to it. So if you want to read it and see for yourself, I read it earlier. It doesn't take that long because there's only 18 pages. My assessment is this. You're probably going to determine that if you believe that Joe Biden had no idea this was happening, and you believe that Merrick Garland and the FBI are totally on the up and up, and that it was necessary to send 30 armed FBI agents to Donald Trump's home at 6 in the morning, take his passports, break into his safe, and rifle through Melania's closet. If you think he deserved that, you're going to love this affidavit, what little of it you'll see. If you are appalled that there was some question about some papers that the archivist, not the administration currently, not President Biden per se, but somebody at the National Archives thought that President Trump should have left behind in Washington. And they knew this in February when they first made contact with the Department of Justice. And if you think that was so on fire that they just had to get it because secrets were potentially going to be leaked, then you're going to have to figure out how come it took from February until August the 8th for it to become such a big deal that they conducted a raid. And even the search warrant itself was executed on Friday. If this was all the concern about there might be nuclear secrets, would you really wait till Monday morning Wouldn't you go right then if it was that urgent, if it was a matter of national security? So forgive me for being the cynic, but I've seen this movie before. It was called The Russia Hoax. Remember that one? And that's when FBI agents and Department of Justice officials have been caught lying about going to the FISA court with information they knew was not true in order to obtain a search warrant on first President-elect Trump and then President Trump. So forgive me for being somewhat of a cynic, Pam, but you know, reading through this, I'm thinking, I kind of think what happened was that Donald Trump had information in those files about Crossfire Hurricane, which was the FBI investigation that tried to make him look like a Russia plant. It failed, but some of their maybe activities were revealed in those files. And frankly, I think they wanted to go get them. And it's not about redacting the affidavit, it's about destroying those records to make sure they never see the light of day.
And will we have a way of monitoring that? Will that happen?
I don't know. I mean, I'm so busted in my trust of some of these folks running the enforcement and intel agencies, because they've been caught in so many lies. Yeah. So it's hard to say. Here's one of the questions. Do you think that President Biden had any advanced knowledge? He's repeatedly said he didn't. For example, here he is right here saying, nope.
President, how much advance notice did you have of the FBI's plan to search Mar-a-Lago?
I didn't have any advance notice. None. Zero. Not one single bit. Thank you.
Mr. President.
There he goes. Nothing. I know nothing, he says. Now that I believe. That did not satisfy the curiosity of all the reporters at the White House. And in fact, Karine Jean-Pierre has been repeatedly asked. I want you to listen carefully to her answer, which in many ways is pretty much a non-answer.
Who in the White House knew about this investigation? Because the president has been adamant that he knew nothing, he got no warning about it.
So those are two different things. So let me just say that for a second. Look, when it comes to the investigation, the search that we saw recently that you all have reported on, we have been very clear on this. The president was not briefed. No one at the White House was briefed. We are not briefed on investigation. We are just not going to comment.
Are you saying that he didn't know about the actual, that there would be a search warrant carried out? Because he did have to know about it, about the documents being there, because he had to sign off on the giving the archives.
Again, two different things, right? We did not.
Wow, when Don Lemon doesn't believe the White House, why should I? I mean, what else can I say? Now, knowing government speak as I do, when I listened to her, I noticed that she was very selective in how she said this, and I want you to think about it. She didn't say the president was not notified. She made very specifically, and more than once she used the term, he was not briefed. No one at the White House was briefed. Now, maybe I'm reading too much into it. If she'd said no one at the White House had any knowledge of it, that would have been very different than they weren't briefed. Briefed means that someone sat down and gave them an extensive background of what happened. I don't know that I would doubt that. They probably didn't. But to say that he had no advance notice, that he knew nothing about it whatsoever, something of this magnitude, that his administration was going through the personal home of his predecessor, who might even be his opponent in 2 years, and that he just didn't have any clue that that was going on. One of two things. He's either lying, or he really doesn't have a stinking clue about what's going on anything. I find it hard to believe. But her denial was so parsed that to me it was rather revealing. And I kind of get the impression Don Lemon from CNN, he wasn't buying it either.
Yeah. So I believe as well. There's a big communication gap in there somewhere. So
yes.
Stay tuned, as they say.
Well, we're so glad we have a lot of people watching today. I hope you'll get your questions in, but always we want to remind you, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave us a comment, a like, and share that we are live from our theater in Hendersonville, Tennessee, just outside of Nashville right now. We'll get to your questions here in a moment. Before I do, we've said our question of the day is, what do you think about the loan forgiveness program that the president has done? You know what Nancy Pelosi thinks? My gosh, here I am. I actually agree with Nancy Pelosi on something. This is a big day. For those of you who think I'm just a very partisan hack, I'm openly saying I agree with Nancy Pelosi on something. Right here, I prove it.
People think that the President of the United States, is this more on the subject than you ever want to know? Well, you'll let me know. People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
She's right. The president cannot authorize or appropriate money that has not been authorized and appropriated by Congress. This is a simple constitutional principle. Congress holds the power of the purse. The executive branch holds the power of the sword. And holding the sword is a very powerful thing, but it ain't the money. The money has to be authorized by Congress. So when President Biden says, we're just going to wipe this debt off, on what authority? And I find it just fascinating that there aren't more people screaming about the authority with which he's doing it. But it is interesting when he's asked about who's paying for it, it's kind of hard to get that answer from him. Let's watch.
Mr. President, is this unfair to people who paid their student loans or chose not to take out loans?
Is it fair to people who, in fact, do not own multi-billion-dollar businesses if she wants these guys to give them all a tax breaks? Is that fair? What do you think?
What a non-answer. You know, the question that the reporter, it wasn't a Fox reporter, but the question is, do you think it's fair that these people are getting their loans forgiven when all these people paid theirs? And what he gave is a non-answer by shifting to something completely irrelevant. Well, what do you think? Is it fair that some people are getting tax breaks out of the big corporations? Guess what, Joe, if they are, do you know why they're getting those tax breaks? Because when you were in the Senate, you helped write the tax laws. And what they're getting is what you gave them. But it was the law, and it is the law. They don't get to just make it up as they go. But here's the news. Neither do you, Joe. You don't get to just make it up because you feel it. We are not a nation of what we feel. We're a nation of laws. Nancy Pelosi understood that, and she said the president can't just forgive loans. She was right. Joe Biden was wrong. Now, Peter Doocy asked Karine Jean-Pierre in the White House press room, who's paying for all this stuff? That's a legitimate question, don't you think? Here's that exchange.
You're talking a lot about how much it might cost, it might not cost. Who is paying for this?
What we are saying is the work that this administration has done, the work that the Democrats in Congress has done is actually there, and you see that the 1.7 trillion deficit deduction that you see is going to benefit us in being able to do something for the middle class, to do something for the middle class.
But when you
This is about doing something for people who make less than $125,000, $1.7 trillion. That's what we've been able to do.
But when you forgive debt, you're not just disappearing debt. So who is paying for this?
And then I'll give you the second part. We lifted the pause, right? We're going to lift the pause at the end of this year, which is going to matter, right? Which is going to offset a lot of what we're doing as well.
Boy, I tell you, it's almost just amazing to watch as she tries to give an answer that is no answer at all. And essentially, simple question, who's paying for this? I mean, somebody's got to pay, right? And she goes into this song and dance about how, oh, this is all part of the great plan of economic recovery. No, it isn't. This is buying votes. That's all this is. 40 million people, he's trying to buy their vote. And I hope people aren't so stupid that they fall for it. but I fear that there will be some who do. We sure hope people will hit the like button on their devices, and that's important. Subscribe. Also, be sure to hit the notification bell. That lets us tell you when we're going to be doing things like the live stream. Love to get your comments, but we're kind of focusing on hit that like button and share it with other people.
Absolutely.
I know we've got some questions coming.
Oh,
Let's
we
go through
do.
them.
And I have to tell you, the folks in the control room threw an extra question out there today.
Oh, they did?
In the chat. How many of you suckers have paid off your student loans? Okay, so we got literally in moments over 300 votes, and I never took out a student loan. That was 61%. That's a very interesting number.
Interesting.
I paid mine off 34%, and you'll pay mine off 3%. So anyway, thanks for that, guys. That was actually clever and fun. All right, a couple of things. Furbalami says, I want everything for free. The problem is I've paid off everything. I have done that by working hard. What's paid off? My house, 2 cars, no credit card debt. The government didn't pay off a thing. And that was Furbalami.
Furbalami. Well, Furbalami, I think you sound kind of like me. You feel just a little stupid that you acted with great levels of responsibility. You sacrificed things you wanted in order to pay off your bills and your debt, and now you feel like a fool. Because if you'd just waited, good old Uncle Sugar would have taken care of you, and he would have said, don't you worry about that, Annie. If you'll vote for me, I'll wipe out your loan. It is frustrating. And incredibly responsible people like Furbalami, has to feel really put upon. This is a government that just said, I'm going to take his or her money. I don't know if Furbalami's a man or a woman, but I'm going to take this person's money who saved it, who scrimped, and paid off everything. Now I'm going to go ask him, hey, your neighbor over here, the one that got the newer truck than you have, the one that added the new room when you couldn't, the one who took the nice vacation when you didn't, the one who, buys designer clothes when you don't. He'd like for you just to walk across the street and hand him $10,000 of cash. By the way, you know what the average American's going to pay for this to happen? The average American, $2,000. That's what it's going to cost every American to pay off this student loan promise. So all of you out there, I hope that you have $2,000 laying around and you don't mind giving it across the street or next door to people who didn't pay off their loans. My guess is it's going to tick some people off when they think about that.
Absolutely. All right, Kay McCoy says, and this is going back to the Trump affidavit that was just released, did they release any names in the affidavit or just Trump? Do you know?
No, they did not. They didn't release any of the FBI agents. They didn't release any of the witnesses or the sources. No names.
Okay, now David Ferris, too, with the Super Chat. Will the Trump team get an unredacted copy of that affidavit?
No, they will not.
Okay. Oh, I love sweet messages. Wendy Peppercorn is writing in today. She's in our chat and says, God bless the entire Huckabee family and crew.
Oh,
that's very nice.
Thank
Wendy. We appreciate that.
Adorations to you. Thank you.
Stephanie G'day says today, I believe in the saying, you play, you pay. Is this even legal, and will he get away with this? Or in December, after elections, will they say, we can't legally do this?
That may happen. That very well may happen, because here's what I don't understand. The Republicans in the House and Senate ought to immediately file a lawsuit challenging the legality of what he's proposing. And why they don't, I can't answer that. And if they don't, somebody, and here's someone who has standing, anyone who had a student loan. I never had a student loan. I just paid mine as I went. I worked 40 hours a week and took 20 hours a semester of classes to get my degree because I was paying for every bit of it. And I didn't want a loan to do it because I was afraid, what if I can't pay it? So I didn't do a loan. A lot of people in good faith did it. They've paid their loans off and they've been on time. They have standing to sue to say, look, you're paying off loans of people that didn't even attempt to pay them, and people who have used money they could have paid it with, but they used it for items that I can't afford. That's what ticks me off, is that person who has the latest iPhone, and they do go to Starbucks twice a day, And, you know, they entertain themselves, they go and party hard and enjoy nice restaurants, but they can't pay off their student loan.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people pay it off by eating ramen noodles and cheese and macaroni out of the box over and over. And I just don't have much sympathy for people who wait for the government to bail them out.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Agreed. Laura Davenport is saying today, Governor, asking, how about we forgive it as long as they declare bankruptcy? They should make people hesitate to take this bailout.
Yeah, the problem if you declared bankruptcy is that all your creditors would basically get a fraction of what is owed in the settlement. So that's probably not a good thing to have happen. Let's take one more question, then we're going to show some more clips.
Sure thing. Margaret Mitchell is writing this afternoon, Governor, what's the status of the Convention of States, and can additional changes be added, such as eliminating the executive order?
I mean, technically you could put anything in there that you want, but remember, it has to go through all the states. The Convention of States is still working its way through to get to the 38 states that would be necessary to call a convention, and then the agenda gets, ratified by the states. It's a slow process, but the good news is it is underway. Will we ever have it? I don't know. I hope so, because I'd love to see balanced budget, term limits. I'd like to see a lot of things. Lifetime ban on lobbying for members of Congress. They'd never get to lobby. But we shall see whether any of those things happen. We have some interesting clips because Joe Biden has said that this bill that he put forward, this multi-billion-dollar bill, you know, the one Joe Manchin caved in and voted for, even though he said he would never vote for something like that, which, by the way, this week it was revealed that Joe Manchin now has the lowest approval numbers of anyone in all of politics, which is shocking. That's what it did for him. But Joe Biden has asked about how this is going to be helpful. Let's watch.
I think if the Republicans really cared about reducing inflation, they would have voted for the Inflation Reduction Act.
So what he's saying is the Republicans didn't vote for the Inflation Reduction Act and therefore they don't care about inflation. No, it's just that they understand very simple economics, that if you are in a hole, the first thing you do, you stop digging. And what this bill does, it gives everybody a bigger shovel. And by the way, that shovel could be used to shovel some other stuff, but this is a family show. I will not go beyond that. Also at this same campaign rally, Joe Biden is trying to explain why we need to get Democrats elected to the Senate, something I can't imagine how that would help us. But I'm having a hard time understanding his understanding of that.
We elect 2 more senators. We keep the House and Democrats. We're going to get a lot of unfinished business we're going to get done.
Oh boy, I can't wait for that unfinished business, because the finished business is about to kill us all. But we shall see. One other item from that political rally, as he rolls up his sleeves to be the common man that he is all the time, he makes it very clear how he feels about the Second Amendment.
Promise you we're not stopping here. I'm determined to ban assault weapons in this country. I did it once before and we will do it again.
Pam, does he not look like the angriest man in America?
Every time he's on the mic.
I mean, he squints and his brows furrow, and then he just scrunches up his face and screams and yells at that teleprompter. And I think he's going to blow a gasket here.
Yeah, I'm afraid to hand him a microphone most days, but okay. Jay Luther is asking today, Gov, or making a statement and asking for you to react. Trump was in possession of documents he should not have been. Is that okay with you, Governor?
Well, the question would be, how do you know they were documents he shouldn't have had? He was the president, and he has access to any documents he wants. If he declassifies the documents, they're no longer classified. Therefore, he is perfectly within his rights to have them. Should he keep them? Maybe, maybe not. I wouldn't even argue that point. And it may have been maybe undesirable for him to have kept certain things. But you know what you don't know? And in fact, what I don't know? What exactly those documents were. And to say he shouldn't have kept them would indicate that I know what was in them. And I don't know, because he did keep them under lock and key. In fact, can I just say something to you, Jay? He did something that James Comey didn't do. He did not leak any of those documents to the New York Times. James Comey had classified documents that he leaked to the New York Times. Did anybody raid James Comey's home? Did anyone go in with guns a-blaring and go through his personal safe and break into it, take his passport, go through his wife's closet? No, they did not. So when people tell me, well, he may have had something he shouldn't have had, fine. Call his lawyer and say, we'd like to come down there with your lawyer and our lawyers present, and we'd like to go through those boxes. And if we think there's something not there, then we can have a dispute about it. We can get it settled even before a judge. But you didn't need to raid with 30 armed agents a former president's home when you didn't really know what you were looking for. And if you say, well, they knew what they were looking for. If they knew what they were looking for, why'd they take his passports? Why did they break into his safe? A warrant for a search of a person's home requires very specific and very limited parameters, because otherwise it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. You can't just go through and search people's homes and their papers. That's exactly what they did.
Gov, we do have a couple of super chats I want to make sure we squeeze in this afternoon. Don't forget to hit that like button too, okay? Still time to do that. All right, Governor, when will we see the Epstein client list? This came from Stephen Ayers this afternoon.
Stephen, you and I won't live that long. I just don't think we'll ever see it. Why? Why are we not going to see it? But we won't.
Patrick Parker writes today, too, in a super chat. Thank you very much, Patrick, for that. With everything going on south of the border, can the Biden administration be held for aiding and abetting of trafficking humans and organ harvesting?
What's happening down there is absolutely atrocious. And there were reports that just came out today about the organ harvesting. This is something so repulsive that I had a hard time believing that this could happen. These are little children, because children's organs are more valuable because obviously they're not organs that have been subjected to smoking, drinking, and drug abuse. So you get more money for the kidney or the lung of a child. So what has been discovered is that these children are kidnapped, they're murdered, their organs are harvested and sold, and then drugs are packed into the bodies of the children because they're less likely to be searched. They're sent over as bodies in transit filled with drugs where their organs used to be. You know, that sounds like science fiction, doesn't it?
No.
Can you imagine
Horrible.
how awful a human being must be to do that to other human beings? So the question was, will the Biden administration be held for aiding and abetting? No. They're not going to be. And I'm not sure, I don't want to go criminally charge them. I just want them to secure the border. I want them to do it not for the sake, because I don't want to see people from Mexico come to America. That doesn't bug me that much. If they come legally and if they get in line and they want to come work and they want to come be an American, that's great. Our country is better because we've had people from all over the world come here and live the American dream. But I don't want fentanyl coming into this country. It's killed 100,000 people last year, 100,000. And I don't want little children to be trafficked and used in a way worse than any slave in history has ever been used. And I want it stopped. And one of the ways we stop it is we seal the border and we don't make it so easy for people to sell human beings, like selling baseball cards across the border. That's
Governor, I've got to sneak this in real quick before we wrap up today. We asked the question, do you agree with forgiving student loans for people making up to $125,000 or $250K a year? Man, we hit a nerve today, over 1,500 folks voting, and 96% saying no.
Wow.
And 3% yes. So, yeah, we hit a nerve today, I believe, with that one.
Let your congressman know. I really mean that.
Absolutely.
It's important. Hey, be sure to leave your questions in the comments. Even after we go off the air, we'll still retrieve them. It may be our comment of the week for next week. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and we will look forward to having you back with us for our next live stream. We're so grateful that you joined us today. Do not forget to watch the show tomorrow night, right here on TBN, 8 and 11 Eastern, 7 and 10 Central, and It's going to be quite the show. How do I know? Watch this, I'll tell you.
This week on Huckabee, Tennessee Congressman Chuck Flashman, celebrity fitness trainer Dan Isaacson, comedian Chris Wineland,
Kit Kats, M&M's, Gobstoppers. Oh, who ordered the Chinese food?
And country singer Stephanie Quayle performed. Watch Huckabee on Saturday at 8, 7 Central, and again on Sunday at 9, 8 Central, right here on TBN.